Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Who makes us holy with mitzvot and commands us to engage in words of Torah. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I began first with one of my favorite poems. One of my favorite poems, written by a little-known writer. And appropriately for today, the title of the poem is Song. Song. It's appropriate because today is Shabbat Shirah. Shabbat Shirah, the Sabbath of song. That is the Sabbath where we read the song at the sea. The words that Moses and the people of Israel sing after going through the sea, being chased by the Egyptians after leaving Egypt. That's part of the Passover story. The people enter into the sea splits, the people pass through, the Egyptians chase in after them in pursuit, the sea closes in upon them and the army drowns. But the people are finally free, and they sing in joy, including the words, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh. And by intentional design, these words, mi chamocha, are included in our morning and evening prayers just after the Shema. We sing these words too. We sing these words, placing ourselves along with the Hebrews coming out of Egypt, because every day we are supposed to mention the coming out of Egypt. Every day, according to the Talmud, we are to mention the coming out of Egypt, and so it's in our prayers. And we remember with great gratitude that liberation and the potential for liberation is at all times. At all times, liberation is potential. So it is appropriate to read a poem titled Song on this Shabbat Shirah, this Shabbat of song. And it is appropriate to read this poem, which employs the image of a tree, because yesterday was Tu B'Shvat, the 50th day of the month of Shvat, the new year of the trees, according to Hillel. In Israel, there is the practice of planting trees on the day of Tu B'Shvat. In our communities, there is the revived practice of the Tu B'Shvat Seder, with its variety of fruits and 4 cups of wine, white mixed with red mixed with white, and red. You may recall that Hillel's contemporary, Shammai, 2,000 years ago, claimed the New Year of the trees should be on the 1st of Shvat. But Hillel ultimately the sages placed it on the 15th of Shvat, somewhere close to the point where the earliest buds begin to appear on trees in the winter in the land of Israel. And that poem, titled Song, and so appropriate to both Shabbat Shirah and Tu B'Shvat, reads, Song. I find no image but a tree that fills the dreams life longs to be, all health for wondrous summer days, with radiant green and playful sways. Then autumn bursts with vivid flare, when reds and yellows inflame the air. And winter settles tranquil still, while nature rests her vibrant will, till spring may have its green rebirth, and once again, life trees the earth. On the surface, the poem may seem lighthearted. The words, a little sing-song, but it masks a lot of struggle. The little-known poet, Stephen Val, was always sick. He lived in the Washington, D.C. area, and he died at the age of 17 of cystic fibrosis in 1972. Weeks after his death, when his parents finally were able to go into his room, and they found the strength to start going through his desk, they found pages of poetry that they did not know he had been writing, which in 1976 they published in a collection they called Fallen Leaves. And sometime in the 70s, I saw it advertised in a paper and ordered it. Since he knew how sick he was, you can hear the struggle, the hope and the longing in the words of this poem, which he wrote just a year before he died. I find no image but a tree that fills the dreams life longs to be. All health for wondrous summer days with radiant green and playful sways. Then autumn bursts with vivid flare when reds and yellows inflame the air. And winter settles tranquil still while nature rests her vibrant will, till spring may have its green rebirth, and once again life trees the earth. The poem speaks very much to the message of Tu B'Shvat, which is about much more than collections of fruit. The Tu B'Shvat Seder is a revived practice for the most part, established first by Kabbalists, so you know there's got to be more in it than meets the eye. Ultimately, it's not just about trees, but it is about the tree, Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. It is about that which has its roots in the earth and its branches in the heavens, that which connects all the universe together, the web-like interconnectivity of all things. It's about the one of the universe, the life of the universe. And it is about those first buds in the middle of winter. How strange it is to be celebrating trees when they are still, for the most part, dormant. But what we celebrate is that bud of hope in the midst of winter, the expectation that things at some point will be okay once again. The daily reciting of the Song at the Sea contains the same thought. Despite what afflicts us now, we will come through. We're struggling through the mud, but we will be in wide open space. We have come through before, and we will do so again. Mi chamocha is a daily affirmation of the claim in the Haggadah that in every generation it is each of us who have come out and are coming out of Egypt. It is about hope, even in the moment of struggle. But of course, it's never so easy, never just so easy. The second half of this week's Parsha is about that struggle with hopelessness, the struggle with hopelessness. We have the story of the manna, the mysterious edible something that God provides free of charge, a gift to sustain the people on their way, and to let the people know as well which day actually is the seventh day that they're supposed to observe as a Sabbath, since on Friday, the day before the Sabbath, there will fall a double portion to gather. So everything will be prepared for Shabbat in advance. But the people have been struggling They've been struggling without hope or confidence. They finally reached that wide open wilderness and they don't know how to handle it. Not long after they have crossed through the sea, they are already complaining. Moses, don't you remember all that meat we had to eat? You know, in Egypt, you have brought us out into this wilderness to cause the death of this entire community through hunger. So God sends the manna, of which the Torah explains it was like coriander. It was like coriander seed, and it tasted like wafers in honey. And yet the people are troubled, restless, fearful. We read again. The people quarreled with Moses. Give us water to drink, they said. And Moses replied to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you try the Lord? Why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, why did you bring us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and livestock with thirst? Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, what shall I do with this people? Before long, they will be stoning me. And then the Lord said to Moses, pass before the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take along the rod with which you struck the Nile and set out. I will be standing there before you on the rock at Horeb, that mountain you started from and are heading towards. Strike the rock, and water will issue from it, and the people will drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. The place was named Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord present among us or not? The people are undergoing both internal and external struggles, fearful and hesitant, even in the face of so much to be grateful and hopeful for. They must be asking, do we have the inner fortitude to make it through to the other end of this journey? At the same time, they are facing outward threats. Outward threats. For what's also going on, we read, Amalek. Amalek. Amalek is some people living in that desert wilderness that at some point attacked at the rear, attacked the weakest among them. So we read, Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, pick some men for us and go out and do battle with Amalek. Tomorrow I will station myself on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Then, whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. But whenever he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew heavy, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat upon it, while Aaron and Hur, one on each side, supported his hands. Thus his hands remained steady until the sun set. And Joshua overwhelmed the people of Amalek with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, inscribe this in a document as a reminder and read it aloud to Joshua, saying, I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and named it Adonai Nisi, which means Adonai is my banner. He said, it means hand upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will be at war with Amalek throughout the ages. So we read, God will blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. The Lord will be at war with Amalek throughout the ages. To be clear, Amalek does not need to be understood to mean a particular people. In fact, these days it can't be. There is no identifiable people of Amalek today. And it is for God to do this in any case. Instead, we have a long tradition in Rabbinic Judaism of understanding the reference to Amalek as being about all those forces seeking to destroy us spiritually or physically. And indeed, there have been many forces seeking to destroy us. And today, this week, is a convergence of various events. I mentioned Shabbat Shirah, I mentioned Tu B'Shvat, but also tonight, as we speak, we're reading about Amalek, even on the eve of January 27th, the annual day designated by the United Nations as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. January 27th, which is tomorrow, is the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Israel is rarely treated like any other nation state at the United Nations. The anti-Semitism that is so much part of Western and Islamic traditions does get translated into the national policy of Western and Islamic states, states that hold the majority in the United Nations, even if most people don't see how that anti-Semitism gets translated, it is there. It should not have needed to be Israel to propose that the United Nations adopt an annual day to remember the Holocaust. But Israel did introduce the resolution, and it is the only Israeli-sponsored resolution the United Nations General Assembly has ever adopted. This year, the annual International Holocaust Remembrance Day is taking place, I believe, for the first time since the day was established, in the midst of a horrendous war involving Israel and Hamas. And it will be telling how the United Nations commemorates its own Holocaust Remembrance Day. At this point, if the United Nations wants to contribute to peace, it really needs to do something to inject some hope into whatever possibilities there are for a resolution of conflict. A voice of hope is what is missing from all the rhetoric of the United Nations. And I actually mean a voice that would give some hope to Israel that somehow the international community actually cares about Israel's security concerns. The larger tendency of the United Nations is to condemn Israel when things are calm and to attempt to pressure Israel when conflict is hot. What is missing from this combination of approach is any attempt to provide hope. If, as Israel's critics say, Israel has to be the responsible party because Israel is the stronger party, then the United Nations has to give Israel some basis for hoping that the international community really does take Israel's security needs seriously. It is that sense of any hope that the international community really does care. It's that sense of hope that is missing from so much of the international discourse. And hope, of course, is only the first step, because eventually what is also needed is a basis of trust, a basis upon which Israel can trust that the international community actually cares about Israel's security and actually means it if it were to say it. But right now there is neither trust nor hope, and a glimmer of hope has to come first. How the United Nations chooses to commemorate this day will in some ways affect the direction of this. Now, I was contemplating this earlier in the week, and today, what I didn't know, what I can say I saw today is, and you could look it up on the internet. Earlier today, the United Nations at their building in New York actually had a ceremony commemorating United Nations Holocaust Commemoration Day. And I think I was justified in saying that there is at least a chasm of hope, because the United Nations Secretary General got up and said that, condemned anti-Semitism. And then the ambassador of Israel got up and condemned the United Nations for allowing itself to be weaponized against the Jewish people. I didn't see the whole ceremony, but I don't know who said how much of what, but there's definitely a chasm of hope. And after the Israeli ambassador basically condemned the United Nations for allowing itself to be weaponized against the Jewish people, because there was no other protocol for anything else to happen, the master of ceremonies gets up and thanks the Israeli ambassador, and they move on to the next speaker. So there is a chasm of hope here. Right now, things do seem dark, but it is in the depths of winter that buds may start to develop on trees that can bloom in the spring. That is the hope that we bring to this moment. Finally, I want to mention I can't let Tu B'Shvat go by without mentioning Methuselah. Methuselah. No, I don't mean the character in the Bible who is described to have lived longer than anybody on earth. Methuselah is the longest lived person in the Bible in Genesis. I don't mean that Methuselah. I mean the tree Methuselah. Methuselah is the name of a tree growing in the desert at the Arava Institute in the south of Israel, not far from Elat. I believe it's at Kibbutz Ketorah. The Arava Institute is an institute for ecology and also peace, because they are located near the Jordanian border and in an area where Israel is geographically narrow. Because nature knows no boundaries, as they put it, they include students from Israel, students from the Palestinian territories, they've included students from Gaza, they have students from Jordan, I think they have students from Egypt and other parts of the world. And they also have a horticulturalist there. a horticulturalist who has this specialty. One of her specialties is figuring out how to coax very old seeds to sprout. And she, a few years back, was able to get permission from whatever governmental authorities she needed to get permission from to take 3 date pits, which were discovered decades ago in an archaeological dig. There were 250 date pits that were discovered, pits that were 2,000 years old, Judean dates, which have been extinct since Roman times, when Rome chopped down all of these precious Judean date palms after one of the Jewish uprisings against Rome, and they caused the tree to go extinct. And this horticulturalist was able to get the seed to sprout. And then they planted this 2,000-year-old date pit in the ground. The tree grew, and they named it Methuselah. Methuselah grows there in Kibbutz Ketorah, along with other Judean dates that they also coaxed from some of the other pits. They've even harvested. They're not self-pollinating, so they had to plant. They planted a few. They pollinated the trees. They've now harvested other Judean dates. There are some people there who were the first people to taste Judean dates in 2,000 years. And it is a minor miracle, major miracle, certainly a symbol of hope. Shabbat Shalom. May we find and be agents of hope in the world. And happy Tu B'Shvat.